Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are sailing into something. Well, something pretty remarkable, really. We're talking about the enduring appeal of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
It's a film that's now 2 decades old, which is hard to believe.
Right. But it hasn't just stayed afloat. It's basically dominating the high seas of streaming right now.
It really is the perfect subject for a deep dive because every source we looked at is asking the same fundamental question.
Which is?
How did a 2003 summer blockbuster, born from what is, let's be honest, a pretty leisurely theme park ride, how did it transcend all of that to achieve real, genuine critical glory?
And that is our mission today for you. We're going to unpack the magic that made that first film such a huge hit and maybe more importantly, figure out what its current resurgence on streaming tells us about, the strategy behind reviving a multi-billion-dollar franchise.
Yeah, and we have to start with the hook here because it's just undeniable proof of its resilience. The streaming numbers. Right now as we're talking, The Curse of the Black Pearl is sitting comfortably in the top 10 most streamed movies on Disney+.
It's not a 20-year-old movie. That's stunning.
It is. That level of audience pull after 2 decades is just not normal.
And it's not just pure nostalgia, is it? It feels very connected to the current news cycle.
Oh, absolutely. It's tied directly to the active discourse around the franchise making a comeback. People are either revisiting it out of sheer curiosity or they're trying to, catch up before the next big announcement drops.
So it's a feedback loop.
A fascinating one. The rumor mill about a 6th movie fuels people to rewatch the original, and then those streaming numbers shoot up, which Disney then sees as justification.
As proof that the audience demand is still there.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the origin story, because this is where the deep dive really begins.
It really is.
We live in an era now where IP adaptation is everything. Every video game, every comic book. But back in 2003, adapting a theme park ride, especially one about animatronic pirates, it felt like a punchline.
It did. It felt like a joke waiting to happen. If you look at the landscape then, studios were still figuring things out post-Spider-Man. They were taking huge swings, sure, but a bet on a slow boat ride felt incredibly risky.
But the team behind it, that signaled some ambition. You had Gore Verbinski directing.
And Jerry Bruckheimer producing.
Right. Bruckheimer is just pure spectacle. But Verbinski, he brought this specific, almost quirky gothic feel that really elevated it.
He did. We were all expecting a loud, fun adventure film. What I don't think anyone predicted was the blend of supernatural horror and genuine wit that we got on July 9, 2003.
And that blend is so crucial to why it works.
It is. The sources point out that the film didn't succeed by avoiding its theme park roots. It actually doubled down on the atmosphere of the ride itself.
The fog, the little details in the sets.
The set dressing, that almost tactile feeling of a pirate world.
Yeah.
They took all that atmosphere and just injected real danger into it.
And that danger, it paid off critically. I mean, we are talking about a film that has a certified fresh 79% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Which is an impressive number for a swashbuckler.
Yeah.
That genre was basically dead before this movie came along.
Yeah, and the critics' consensus on there, it kind of captures this perfect paradox about the film.
What does it say?
It says the movie may leave you exhausted like the theme park ride that inspired it. However, you'll have a good time when it's over.
That's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
That is it. Exactly. It's that B-movie joy wrapped up in A-list, 9-figure production values.
But it wasn't just seen as good fun. This thing got serious recognition during awards season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to really contextualize that critical acclaim, you have to look at the Oscars. It got 5 Academy Award nominations. Beyond the Johnny Depp nomination, which everyone remembers, it was up for Best Original Score, Sound Mixing, Sound Editing, and Visual Effects.
So Hollywood basically recognized this as a technical masterpiece.
Yes. They saw it as a fully realized, immersive world, not just some frivolous adventure. It legitimately revitalized the period adventure film.
Which brings us to the formula that earned all that praise. I mean, you, the listener, you know the plot, so we don't need a full summary, but let's touch on the character dynamics that really set the whole franchise up.
The structure is simple, but it's genius. You have the chaotic neutral element, Captain Jack Sparrow. He's this brilliant wildcard, part comic relief, part unexpected wisdom.
And then you pair him with the classic noble hero.
Orlando Bloom's Will Turner, yeah. He's the moral, straight man center of the whole thing.
But crucially, you have Elizabeth Swann, Keira Knightley, and the sources point out she was immediately different from the typical damsel in distress.
Completely different. She's actively involved in the plot, she's politically smart, and she's the one who really drives the action forward by having that cursed Aztec coin.
So you've got the anarchist, the moralist, and the capable woman who breaks the mold.
That was the foundation. And it became this massive cinematic machine. 4 more sequels, 5 films total, a multi-billion-dollar property for Disney.
And even though those later installments, Dead Man's Chest, at World's End, they got a bit dense, narratively.
It lost a bit of that original spark, for sure.
Right. But it's the curse of the Black Pearl that's driving today's streaming numbers.
Yeah.
And the sources all confirm it. Jerry Bruckheimer is deep in development on a 6th film.
And they seem to be trying to capture that original magic again, but trying to recapture the past immediately brings you to a very complex, very modern casting challenge.
Right. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, people are watching the first film now because they're nostalgic for that original dynamic, for that trio. The question is, can Disney actually get them back together?
And the reporting is pretty clear that Johnny Depp is, quote, being eyed to come back as Captain Jack Sparrow.
Which makes sense. He's a massive commercial driver. Sparrow was one of the most recognizable movie characters of the last 20 years.
Easily. But getting the whole band back together, that's proving to be a very selective process, or maybe an unsuccessful one.
Based on what the other 2 stars are saying.
Exactly. You look at Keira Knightley, Elizabeth Swann. She's publicly admitted that, quote, there haven't been any conversations about her coming back.
For a project this deep in development, that's telling.
It suggests either she's not a priority or she's just definitively moved on.
Which is a really strong contrast to Orlando Bloom, Will Turner. His comments are much more open.
Much more. He's floated the possibility, saying something like, maybe there's a world where we get the band back together. He seems interested. Knightley seems absent from the discussion.
So what does that mean for the sequel?
It highlights the pressure.
Yeah.
If they can't get that beloved trio back, the sources suggest the film will have to rely almost entirely on the pull of Jack Sparrow.
Which means a rewrite, shifting the focus away from that romantic adventure that powered the original.
Right. Focusing just on Jack's journey. It makes total commercial sense to prioritize the character with the most global visibility.
Of course. But before we get into the complexity of bringing that character back, let's pivot for a second. There's a really interesting debate that came up in the film's reception, and it'll appeal to the meticulous listeners out there.
This raises a great question about how we define and categorize these big legacy films, especially when we try to measure their impact.
So one of the articles we looked at called Pirates, the best supernatural fantasy film of the decade.
And that, predictably, sparked a huge debate among fans online.
The immediate reaction, of course, was to bring up the elephant in the room.
Lord of the Rings.
How can you make that claim when that entire trilogy came out in the same decade? The commentary was pretty strong, suggesting Pirates wasn't even close to that level.
And that's where genre specificity becomes like a real intellectual necessity. It's not just some academic game.
Commentators jumped in to defend the original statement.
Yeah, they argued that comparing the two was like comparing different planets.
Because the word fantasy is just this massive umbrella, right? It covers so much ground.
A huge amount. When we say fantasy, it includes everything from high or epic fantasy, which is Lord of the Rings, with its constructed worlds, its deep mythology, its global stakes, to all these other subgenres.
And Pirates is firmly in a different camp.
Firmly. It's in the supernatural fantasy or sometimes dark fantasy subgenre. It's about localized magic. Curses, ghosts, specific myths, but all happening inside a recognizable, real-world historical setting. The 18th century Caribbean.
The sources really emphasized that Pirates worked because it was so good within its specific niche.
It absolutely excelled. It took adventure tropes and injected them with horror and gothic elements. That's something Lord of the Rings just wasn't trying to do.
One dominated high fantasy, the other dominated the supernatural swashbuckler.
Exactly. And it's a useful reminder that how we categorize these things really shapes how we perceive their success. Pirates wasn't trying to be the next Tolkien. It was trying to be the best supernatural adventure it could be.
And by those metrics, it was a wild success, hence the 5 Oscar nominations.
It's proof that sometimes critical success isn't just about being good. It's about executing a hybrid concept so brilliantly that you define a subgenre for a whole generation.
So let's bring it all back together for the listener. We started with this surprising fact. A theme park ride becomes a critical smash hit, earning major awards.
Right. And now, 2 decades later, that original success is being leveraged as the film surges in streaming, driven directly by news of a 6th movie.
And that new movie faces the huge logistical problem of trying to reunite its original talent.
The entire arc is just a perfect case study in how studios look backward to move forward. They're betting that the commercial power of the original and its main star can overcome any risks today.
But that immense commercial pressure, that brings us to our final provocative thought. It all revolves around the really high-stakes controversy over Captain Jack Sparrow's potential return.
The sources we saw revealed a starkly polarizing reaction from the audience to the idea of Johnny Depp coming back to Disney.
The commercial incentive is obvious. He's global box office gold.
But the conversation among certain fan groups is intensely divided.
One of the published comments we saw drew a very hard line. The users said they would, quote, lose all respect for Depp if he were to go back to Disney and this franchise after everything that's happened in the past few years.
And you can't just ignore that kind of deep-seated polarizing feeling when you're planning a revival. Disney and Bruckheimer have a really complex calculation to make.
They have to weigh the guaranteed box office lift that Jack Sparrow brings
Against the potential risk of alienating a very vocal part of the audience who would see his return as, a betrayal of loyalty.
So the central question that we leave you, the listener, to think about is this. When you're reviving a guaranteed hit, how accurately can a major studio even measure the price of audience loyalty?
Does that commercial pressure to just recreate the past always outweigh the intense scrutiny and the potential backlash surrounding the very talent you need to make it happen?
That perhaps is the real curse of a mega franchise hit.
The necessity of the impossible reunion.
A perfect storm of legacy, money, and controversy to navigate. Thanks for diving deep with us today.